We had been back together for about 2 or 3 months because the other guy that I slept with was 3 months prior to me getting pregnant.
With her and the other guy, it was more than one time. And then on top of that, it was at my mom's house, in our bedroom.
What?
Get ready for some of the wildest paternity court cases you've ever seen. We've got a grandma who thinks her son's wife cheated, a convict who may be a father, and a couple who were using drugs together and now have a baby. Let's dive in and see what drama unfolds.
Mr. Nevels, you are here today because you claim you are literally stuck between two women at war, your mother, Mrs. Latta, and your wife, Miss Coleman Nevels. Now, you admit you have serious trust issues with your wife, and you say your mother is only making things worse.
Latta, the grandma, is convinced her son Dominique's wife, Jessica, cheated on him while he was in jail. Latta claims Jessica got pregnant just 2 weeks after getting out of jail, and she even has the receipts. Jessica got another guy's name tattooed on her body during their break.
As soon as she got out, she came straight to my son, and 2 weeks later, she said she's pregnant. So in my mind, I'm saying, Your Honor, there's no way Nevaeh could be Mr.
Okay, so I
Nevels'
think
daughter.
that begs the question, how pregnant was she in 2 weeks?
Your Honor, her and my son was nowhere near each other. She was seen on Facebook.
Yikes, that's a bold move. But Jessica says they were on a mutual break, so she was free to do what she wanted. Dominique, on the other hand, had no doubts the baby was his, even though he knew about Jessica's other escapades. This guy is either super trusting or super naive.
So we were able to do whatever we wanted to. It was a mutual agreement. And I feel
Okay, so you're on a break and you've agreed to it. It's paternity court. So during that break, were you sleeping with other people without using protection?
one other person.
One. Okay, so now, Mr. Nevels, were you at the hospital when the baby was born?
Yes.
Things start to get tense when Dominique admits he's been having doubts about the baby's paternity. He says he sometimes looks at his daughter and sees features that don't match him, like he's trying to find proof she's not his. Ouch, that's gotta sting for Jessica.
That is my son's child.
So, Mr. Nevels, do you have doubts now?
There's somewhat doubts from her admitting
Why?
that she had sex with guys. She cheated on me in the past with multiple guys without having any remorse or any type of feelings by cheating on me.
So, how have these doubts played out in your relationship?
I feel very doubtful when I look at her. Sometimes
You do?
It's like,
And then the bombshell drops. A random guy in the neighborhood told Dominic that he knew Jessica was cheating on him with someone specific. Dominic knows the details, so it seems like this other guy is legit. Jessica tries to play it off, saying she used protection with that guy, but Latta is not having it.
So, has anyone ever told you your wife was cheating on you?
Yes, ma'am. It was maybe a couple years back when I was walking through my neighborhood. A guy stopped me and said, "Hey, aren't you Dominique?" I said, "Yeah." "You go with Jessica Coleman?" I said, "Yes." So, he started describing her areas, only specific things that.
The judge steps in to try and calm the situation, reminding everyone that mistakes happen, and the important thing is to try and rebuild trust for the sake of the little girl. You can tell Dominic is really struggling with all the doubt, but at least he's being honest about it. And now it's time for the moment of truth, the DNA test results.
Mr. Nevels, you are her father.
I told you. I never lied.
Feel relieved? Feel better?
It's a lot better. I feel.
Buckle up, folks, because this one's a doozy. Bradley has been wondering for 19 long years who his real father is, and he's hoping the DNA test will finally give him the answers he's been searching for. But his alleged father, Mr. Tessner, is adamant that he's not the daddy.
Mr. Bradley, you say for 19 years you've wondered, who is my father?
Yes, Your Honor.
And you're hoping today's DNA test solves your intricate family mystery. Mr. Tessner, you claim you are 100% sure you are not Mr. Bradley's father.
Yes, Your Honor.
You say another man is on his birth certificate and paid child support. Furthermore,
Bradley explains to the judge how tough it's been growing up without a father. He missed out on so many special moments, like going to his football games or camping with the Boy Scouts. You can really feel the pain and longing in his voice as he describes this void in his life.
Really tough going to my football games, not having a father there at my football games. I joined Boy Scouts. I had to go with a friend and his father. and kind of felt like a third wheel when I watched them interact with each other, and it's kind of tough, and not having a father myself to go camping with and to take to the juries at the Boy Scouts, and kind of just had to go with other friends and their fathers to do things.
Mr. Tessner, on the other hand, seems pretty confident that he's not the father. He claims he only dated Bradley's mom for about a month and has no memory of even having sex with her, let alone her getting pregnant. He says he was never contacted about a baby and was completely blindsided when Bradley's aunt showed up at his house claiming he was the dad.
To make out, I cannot even remember having sex with her, and I never knew that she was pregnant or that a baby was born.
Never?
Never.
You were never contacted?
I was never contacted. No, ma'am.
And so when did you first come to know you potentially had a son?
His aunt brought him to my house and said he was my baby, but I didn't believe her because I had heard nothing from the mom, knew nothing about her being pregnant.
Bradley's mom, Miss Bradley, admits that she may not have actually told Mr. Tessner that she was pregnant. She thought her boyfriend at the time was the father, so she just went ahead and put his name on the birth certificate, even though there was no paternity test done.
Nobody's name was put on the
Can't nobody make you put no name on a birth
1984.
certificate. No, they shouldn't have been nobody put on that birth certificate until there was a paternity test.
And that makes you angry that you've lived through this type of
Yeah,
confusion.
because I watched that man go to jail for child support.
She's lying.
And
She
the
never
name was
put the
printed
other
on-
man's name on
the
there
man's
until
name was
1984.
printed.
Things start to get really heated when Miss Bradley reveals that the man whose name is on the birth certificate has actually been paying child support all these years, even going to jail at one point for failing to pay. Bradley is outraged, saying this other man's life has been ruined because of his mom's lies.
So, Ms. Bradley, let me ask you, why did this other man sign the birth certificate?
The court ordered someone on the birth certificate. And at that time, I told the courts that I felt like my boyfriend then was his father.
Without ever having a paternity test?
I think the other man had a paternity test. I was
Did you believe when
told
you
he did.
provided that name he was the biological father? Or you knew?
At that time, yes.
Mr. Tessner adds fuel to the fire by claiming that he's heard the other man took a paternity test and was confirmed as the father. But Miss Bradley insists that's not true, and she's convinced Mr. Tessner is the real dad because Bradley started looking more and more like him as he grew up.
So you're saying the other man took a paternity test,
That's
was
what I heard.
confirmed to be the father,
That's what I
and that's
heard.
why he was responsible
That's
for
what I
child
heard.
support?
Why is she going after the other man for child support in 1984? And he's a roofer, and roofers only works part of the time. I'm in the military in 1984. If I'm the dad, why didn't you go after me then? I paid child support on my other kids.
Bradley opens up about how he confronted the other man, who told him straight up that he never took a paternity test. He also says the man's own sister told him there's no way he could be the father, since Miss Bradley was already pregnant when they started dating.
She said, when y'all started dating, Anita was already pregnant with him.
So she told you point blank?
Point blank. She said, I told you so. Because I seen her later on at my great-grandmother's funeral, or the one I thought was my great-grandmother.
So you meet Mr. Tessner and you feel like you look in his face and you see your face.
Exactly.
But Mr. Tessner, you say you do not see any
He looks that
resemblance.
much like me. He's darker than me.
The judge tries to get to the bottom of this tangled web of lies and confusion. She acknowledges that neither Mr. Tessner nor Miss Bradley seem to be fully processing the emotional toll this has taken on Bradley. You can see the frustration and hurt on Bradley's face as he expresses how much he's missed out on by not knowing his true father.
I've went and fixed his girlfriend's cars, his cars. I've done a lot for him, even with doubt that he is mine.
He's right. I mean, she has lied to me a lot growing up. He did help me get the house. I just want the results. That way he knows the truth, and that way I can move on with my life.
Do you have doubt?
No, I don't have no doubt.
Finally, the moment of truth arrives. The judge is ready to read the DNA results, and it's time to solve this decades-old mystery. Is Mr. Tessner really Bradley's biological father? Let's find out.
Mr. Tessner, you are his father.
Now we know.
And I know you said you feel like you missed out on a lot.
I know I did.
But at least everything's on the square now.
How do you feel, Mr. Bradley?
I already knew.
You knew it. You have requested clerical fees in the amount of $50.
Oof, looks like we've got another doozy of a case on our hands here, folks. This one's all about a little boy named Wesley and the question of who his real daddy is. His grandma, Miss Maldonado, is convinced that the man on the birth certificate, Mr. Marsh, ain't the real deal. And Mr. Marsh, well, he's got his doubts too.
He suffers from a severe case of autism. He's being raised by his grandmother and barely knows his mother and his father. The results of today's paternity test will help determine the course of his future. Mr. Marsh, you are listed on Wesley's birth certificate as his dad.
Yes, Your Honor.
Apparently, Miss Maldonado and her son went to Mr. Marsh's house before Wesley was even born and straight up told him that the unborn child might not be his kid. But Mr. Marsh was young and in love, and he just couldn't bring himself to believe his girl would do him dirty like that. So he signed that birth certificate anyway.
A 1-year-old child outside in the cold just for me to be able to see him or for me to be able to help out with him. I pay my child support. I pay $269 plus money in my arrearments. I'm $13,000 in debt because of it, but I still, whenever I have a job, I pay the state for child support.
But as Wesley grew up, Mr. Marsh started to have his doubts. The kid just didn't look like him at all. And Miss Maldonado's family, they're Puerto Rican. So the little guy's dark features made Mr. Marsh wonder if maybe he wasn't the daddy after all. And then there's the whole issue of Mr. Marsh not being allowed in the house to see his son.
I didn't see a point of every time I went to go see my son to be threatened to be put in the ER if I walked through the threshold of the door.
That is incorrect. Ms. Maldonado, is he being threatened when he comes to try to see Wesley?
No, he is not. He is not allowed in my house anymore because when my grandson was 2.5 months old, he came over to the house and he disrespected me and my husband in my house, and at that point I told him.
Now, Miss Maldonado's got another surprise up her sleeve. A video statement from Wesley's mom, Jolene, and she doesn't hold back. She's straight up calling Mr. Marsh a deadbeat dad, saying he's never bought the kid diapers or wipes or anything. But Mr. Marsh came with receipts.
She's a habitual liar, so usually what she said I took with a grain of salt.
So, Mr. Marsh, you signed the birth certificate?
Yes, Your Honor.
So why is it you have doubt?
He just does not look like me. I'm all white. There's no any other kind of descent in my family. Jolene's half Puerto Rican.
And then there's the matter of Wesley's mom's neighbor, the guy who Mr. Marsh thinks might be the real father. Turns out this dude submitted a statement saying he's definitely not the dad, and he can't wait for the DNA results to prove it. But Mr. Marsh's own mom, Edelina, has some doubts too. Apparently the kid just doesn't fit the Marsh family's Scandinavian looks.
Or my grandchild was born, and then in the hospital, when he was questioning because my grandson was dark, because my family is Puerto Rican, I said, don't sign his birth certificate. And he signed it anyway.
I didn't have doubt at that point in time.
At that time you didn't, so you signed it.
Yeah, I was 17. I was young and dumb and in love.
Whew, this is getting intense, y'all. The judge is trying to keep everyone calm and focused on what's best for Wesley, but it's clear there's a lot of bad blood and hurt feelings going on here. Miss Maldonado's saying she's willing to let the neighbor be in Wesley's life if he's the real dad, but Mr. Marsh, he's just hoping he can finally get his rights as a father.
Multiple friends, boyfriends, there you go.
Okay.
So
you are aware that your sister was with multiple men probably during the time Wesley was conceived.
yes, and I forewarned Eddie that if you do not know it's yours, do not sign the paperwork.
So you even warned Mr.
Went
Marsh.
to his house.
So this is
with
your
my
sister
mom.
and this is your
Yes.
daughter.
Yes, ma'am.
Now, the moment of truth is finally here. The DNA results are in, and the judge is about to reveal who Wesley's real daddy is. Mr. Marsh, he's on the edge of his seat, hoping against hope that he's the one. Miss Maldonado, she's bracing herself, ready to finally get some answers. And the neighbor, well, he's just hoping he's not the one, because that's going to be a whole other can of worms to deal with.
Mr. Marsh, you are his father.
Does that mean I get my rights to him? And I can go without the threats and actually be
Nobody
able to
threatened you.
I've sat on the fence for 5 years about getting the paternity test done because I wanted to believe that he was mine. Maybe I can have my rights to him.
That is all the past.
We've got a classic case of a grandmother who just can't accept that her grandson doesn't look like her. Miss Crow here is trying to prove that her son, Thomas, is the child of the late J.C. Turner. But Miss Reinhardt, the grandma, is having none of it. She's calling Miss Crow a liar and a manipulator, saying that the kid ain't her son's baby.
Miss Crow, you have summoned the defendant to court to prove that her deceased son, J.C. Turner, fathered your 2-year-old son, Thomas. You want Thomas to know who his father is, and you say that Ms. Reinhardt has done everything she can to sabotage your efforts. Is that correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
Miss Crow's trying to explain how she and JC met and fell for each other, but Miss Reinhardt's having none of it. She's saying that the timeline just doesn't add up, and that there's no way Miss Crow could have been pregnant that quickly. Grandma's got a sharp eye, that's for sure.
Ms. Reinhardt, you don't believe your son is Miss Crow's child's biological father?
No.
Explain.
For several reasons. In the time period, the time frame she said she was, when she told me she was pregnant, it didn't happen that way. There's no way she could have been just 2 weeks pregnant and had a stomach firm as she did.
And then it gets even juicier. Miss Reinhardt's bringing up how her son was schizophrenic and had stress seizures. Yikes. That's a lot to unpack. She's basically saying that JC wasn't exactly the sharpest tool in the shed, and that Miss Crow could have easily manipulated him.
I knew my son inside and out, and I just don't, as a mother, as a grandmother, having 4 babies of my own, my gut tells me this is not my grandson. I do not see my son in that. I don't. I'm sorry. I don't.
So, Ms. Crow, can you talk to me about the relationship?
When I first met Jay, we were at a skate park. I noticed him in the parking lot, and I called him over to me.
But Miss Crow's not backing down. She's insisting that JC knew the baby was his and was happy about it. She's even got some photos to prove it. But Miss Reinhardt's not convinced, saying that her son would have believed anything Miss Crow told him. Ooh, the shade is real, folks.
He would willingly do so. He never said anything rude or disrespectful to me. He was nice to me. He was very accepting. He knew this was his child. We were together every day.
He'd have believed you if you told him the sky was purple.
Well, that's your own opinion. That's your own opinion.
The mental capacity of a 16-year-old.
And this how, okay, and you know what? He had feelings. He was schizophrenic. He had feelings.
And then the real bombshell drops. Miss Crow reveals that she didn't even go to JC's memorial service because she was worried about having a confrontation. Oof, that's a tough one to swallow. She's basically admitting that she didn't want to face the family after JC's death.
And you believe this baby does not have that characteristic, which furthers your doubt?
To my understanding.
Me to the point in which the baby was born. Was JC participating in the birth?
Okay, so me and JC, at the time we were living together. It was March 2015. I have decided to no longer go any further in the relationship.
But Miss Reinhardt's not letting her off the hook that easily. She's grilling Miss Crow about how she could have just lost track of her own child's father. Grandma's not buying the excuses, and she's making it clear that she thinks Miss Crow's just in it for the money.
I knew for a fact that, you know, he's the father because I haven't been with anybody else. I was only with him in that time frame. He did come when my son was 3 months old. He came to see him. He had me take pictures on his phone with him and his son. And after that, you know, we went our separate ways and, you know, other things happened, but I was trying to take care of my family.
And then the judge steps in, trying to get to the bottom of this whole mess. She's asking some tough questions, trying to figure out what the real deal is. But the tension is palpable, and you can just feel the animosity between these two women.
The percentage of relatedness between Ms. Reinhardt and Thomas Crow is 99.6%. You are related. Ms. Reinhardt, you have never laid eyes on your grandchild.
The plaintiff, Ms. Smithers, is convinced that her baby daddy, Mr. Stevens, is the father of her son Adrian. But Mr. Stevens ain't buying it. He thinks the kid looks more like the neighbor than him. Buckle up, because this is about to get messy.
Ms. Smithers, you have dragged the defendant to court because you are devastated that he refuses to accept that he is your son Adrian's biological father. You claim today's DNA test results will have a dramatic impact on your future as a family. Is that correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
Mr. Stevens, you say that one look at you and the baby is all the proof anyone needs to see that you are not the father.
All right, let's break this down. Apparently, Ms. Smithers and Mr. Stevens met when they were just teenagers taking GED classes together. They started dating and even had a daughter together. But then things went south. Mr. Stevens was cheating left and right, and Ms. Smithers started getting suspicious.
You know, like you can just type in a letter or you can go to the recent search and it would tell you all who you searched up on that phone. And like, so I would see her exes on there. So like, I didn't trust her.
And so this happy relationship,
it changed it went from being happy to everybody having trust issues.
All right, what happens? I mean, you cheating wouldn't land you in paternity court.
Now, Ms. Smithers is adamant that Adrian is Mr. Stevens's kid. She even claims they were back together when she got pregnant, and that the other guy was just a one-time thing. But Mr. Stevens ain't having it. He's been looking at that baby since day one, and all he sees is the neighbor's kid. He's got doubts, and he's not afraid to let everyone know it.
Cause you know, like I found out that it was a boy, so like, you know, it was my first boy. I was excited about that. You know, like I wanted a first child, like as a boy. That's my 2 daughters were supposed to be, but it ended up being, you know.
Your 2 daughters supposed to be girls. I hate to break it to you.
Well, like, you know.
And
like
there's nothing
like
wrong with that. 5 months, she pops up and tells you, I cheated and this may not be your child?
The judge is trying to keep things civil, but you can tell this is really getting to Mr. Stevens. He's got tears in his eyes as he explains how he's been trying his best to bond with Adrian, but every time he looks at him, he just sees someone else's kid. It's gotta be tough, man. I mean, imagine raising a child you're not sure is even yours.
And that was the first time it happened, and then about a week and a half goes by, and then it was her birthday.
So, Ms. Smathers, you're saying you conceived on your birthday?
Yes.
Were you with Mr. Stevens around that time or only that time?
No, we were together. We were together for, we had been back together for about 2 or 3 months because the other guy that I slept with was 3 months prior to me getting pregnant.
But then the plot thickens. Ms. Smithers' best friend, Miss Craig, takes the stand and drops a bombshell. Apparently, Ms. Smithers had expressed some doubts about Adrian's paternity to her. Uh-oh, looks like Ms. Smithers might have been hiding something after all. Mr. Stevens is feeling validated, but Ms. Smithers is straight up denying the whole thing.
He's the lightest one.
Okay, well, you know babies come in all different skin colors. You cannot judge a baby by what color they come out,
but
or even what color they are. You can't judge that.
I know, that's one of his main points. That's what I'm trying to get through his head. Just because he has lighter skin doesn't mean he's not his.
How many children do you have?
3.
And Adrian is the baby?
Yes, ma'am.
When you look at Adrian, you see the other guy.
The judge is trying to keep a level head, but you can tell she's getting a little frustrated with all the back and forth. She's reminding Mr. Stevens and Ms. Smithers that they need to focus on what's best for the kids, not their own personal drama. And she's got a point. These kids didn't ask for any of this, and they deserve a stable, loving home.
That gives me more doubt, and like I just don't want that. Like I want me and him to have a bond. Like I want us to be able to go fishing. I want us to be able to go hunting and do stuff together.
And that upsets you?
Yes, ma'am.
I see your eyes, they're watering. When you look, it's like you're trying not to see, but you just feel like you can see this other man.
Yeah, like I don't see myself when I look at him.
Finally, the moment of truth arrives. The DNA results are in, and the judge is about to reveal whether Mr. Stevens is the father or not. The tension is palpable as everyone holds their breath, waiting to see how this whole mess is gonna play out. Is Mr. Stevens the dad, or is this baby really the neighbor's?
Mr. Stevens, you are the father. Happy to deliver those results to you.
Thank you.
I can see this means a lot to you.
Yeah.
How are you feeling in this moment to know you do have your son?
Right now I'm happy.